talk about Roadie and what we can do. And then, you always have the designated smart person on the other side of the room, crossing fingers, clears the throat, and asks a question. And this guy was like, and when they clear the throat, everybody looks over, waiting for it.
Yep.
Like, Delta is a huge, great brand, and we have that brand to protect. And how do we know that with all these drivers are going to represent Delta in the way it needs to be represented? And the room falls silent. Everybody looks at me, take a breath, and look at him. I'm like, look, I've over many millions of miles on Delta. Y'all have lost my bag, a number of times. And the last time you did, 2 dudes in a red Honda hatchback smelling like weed showed up to deliver it to the door. I assure you we can do better. And everybody kind of laughed, but they knew it was right, and just sort of diffused the situation, and we moved on from there.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have Marc Gorlin. He's the founder and CEO of Roadie. Marc, thanks for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time.
Thomas, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it, Marc. You have a really interesting and unique background, and Roadie's a really unique product in the industry, and I really love talking to founders like yourself kind of about what they've built and kind of why they decided to build it. So why don't we dive right in kind of to your background, who the heck you are, how you came into the freight industry, and kind of we'll kind of dive in from there.
I'm sort of what you might call a serial entrepreneur. I've started 5 different companies. This is the only one in the freight industry, so I guess I can't keep a job. But it like the entrepreneurial journey sort of started with my dad. That gave me this idea of don't get a job, find a deal. And I mean, he's done 26 plus biotech companies, anywhere from cancer treatment, wound care, and on in his career. And I just sort of saw how things make something out of nothing.
That's really interesting. So how long did he? How long is he still? He's not still building now, but how long was he?
He's still
Is he still doing it
right now in Aspen, Colorado? He's probably got 2 or 3 on the plate. Drives the rest of us crazy.
That's hilarious. And so he's just always working. He doesn't ever want to stop, huh?
He likes building stuff and creating new things.
That's cool. How? Let's dive into how. So you've built 5 different companies. Are you? Is this the one that you're still active in, or how many are you still active in right now?
I'm just active in Roadie, so I'm still CEO of Roadie, but we were acquired by UPS in 2021. So awesome. I'm doing that with a very kind big brother that is helping us, grow and do things we probably couldn't have done if we weren't where we are right now.
No, that's really awesome, and that's really awesome that you guys were able to have that have UPS acquire you. I know that's a pretty massive win in Roadie's book, I'm sure. So why don't we dive into this, Marc? What's kind of the story behind Roadie? I think Roadie's a really interesting and fascinating company. So what was that idea, and how did you kind of come up with it? What was that spark that initially kind of gave you that idea?
Well, it actually came from my place in Florida. So after we bought it, realized that the master bathroom shower, somebody's didn't have pan underneath it, leaked into 6 units in the building. So it was a huge pain in the ass. And so everybody was on their own to fix this shower pan. So I decided to do it, but make the bathroom nicer and put up tile. So it was February 2014. I'm driving down the beach, get to Montgomery, Alabama, stop, have lunch, get back in the truck. I get a call from Glenn, the tile guy. Now, Glenn's from UCLA, if you know where that is.
Yep.
It's actually not that one. It's the upper corner of Lower Alabama.
Yeah.
And he doesn't probably talk like you or me. And the call goes like this. He's like, "Hey, Marc, this is Glenn. That bull-nosed tile done shown up broken and shit. Ain't going to be here till overnight delivery, which is on Monday." Overnight delivery's Friday. It was Thursday. I'm going to get nowhere with Glenn. So I'm like, "Where is the tile?" So
yeah.
Well, I think it's Birmingham. I said, "Okay, find out." I hang up the phone. I'm a little pissed off, sitting at the overpass of I-65 in Montgomery, Alabama. I look left, and I see all these cars going south. I look right, and I see all these cars going north. And I think to myself, there is bound to be somebody leaving Birmingham right now heading to Montgomery. If I just knew who they were, Surely they throw like a box of tile in their trunk. I'll give them $20. They're going that way anyway. There's probably someone going all the way down the beach, and I got my toes in the sand by the time they got there.
Yep.
And that's when it hit me that there's this unreal, like, natural resources, transportation heat map that exists where all of us go. More vehicles than UPS, FedEx, the post office, and every courier cat company you can slap together combined. So I was like, what would happen if we put all that wasted space to use? And that's what we did with Roadie, matching up, big enterprise businesses that small businesses, and you and me with stuff to send with people who are ideally already going in the right direction.
That's definitely a smart way to look at it. Like you had that personal issue, and you were like, damn, like how can I fix this, or how can I solve this issue, or even just like, damn, like why is there not another solution to get me what I need this weekend, or at least maybe on Saturday instead of by Monday. So it's just you kind of saw that pain point that you had in your own life, and really it just found a solution. So so when you kind of initially had that issue, like what were your steps? Did you initially think like, okay, I'm going to start building a business around this, or what were you thinking right away?
Yeah, well, considering my background, it's just sort of everybody's like, "Oh, what deal do you want to find next?" And my answer is always they sort of find me.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that classic innovator's dilemma of like, what problem do you have? And I mean, honestly, normally I'm like, okay, you want to find a problem to solve. In this case, the solution was there that solved my problem, but did other people have problems that it could solve too? I drove down to the beach. I couldn't really breathe in the car. The rain was beating on the windshield. I called few people who became the first employees and folks to help me start the company. And that weekend, I wrote what became the initial business plan of Roadie. Glenn showed up on Monday to fix the tile in the bathroom, and he was wondering why I wasn't so pissed off anymore. And it was just like, well, I got an idea this weekend, and by the time I got back in town, just started trying to put together the structure of like a pitch deck, like really trying to get the idea in a form in which I can communicate it to other people and they don't think I'm half crazy. And then started running it by people I know and respect, and tried to understand like what would you need to build in what order, and what are the natural business problems of this. And with Roadie, it's being a marketplace. It's essentially like you're trying to start eBay, Uber, and Airbnb all mixed up in a bucket. and anytime you start a marketplace, the hardest thing is to grind that thing to life, and get the wheels moving. If you're selling Beanie Babies and you're starting eBay, if there's nobody else out there to buy them, you don't have much of a marketplace. So it's a trick. It's a thing that people always ask, like, what do you worry about most? And it was like making sure that there's balance on both sides of that marketplace. But it's a bear to start up.
Yeah. So you guys started in 2014. What were some of the like initial hurdles or maybe challenges you guys faced kind of breaking into this like new kind of final mile, or like like this new kind of final mile space where you're kind of bringing those goods from a retailer to, or just like a smaller chain in the e-commerce space? How did you, like, what were those initial like conversations like when you started reaching out to some of these businesses, or some or trying to get some carriers in your network? How were some of those initial conversations going?
They were tough, and we didn't really know where the market was first. We started more on consumers, thinking like you and me would send things, and this would be like a courier for us. And the fact of the matter is, most regular people don't send but 5 or 6 items a year, and not consistent, and it doesn't keep a business going. I mean, we within that first number of months after we launched the product, we had a bakery send like 108 orders of cookies, and you would have thought we had just hit the lottery. But it became very clear that we needed to find folks that had consistent demand, and that's where a lot of the big companies in Atlanta really helped us out, particularly Delta, because the idea of starting something where people are going anyway, you don't want to bastardize the deal up front and just have people like just total couriers. But an airport's interesting because a certain number of bags get mishandled every day of every airport that need to get returned to their owners. And you also have a community of people at an airport, so pilots and passengers and flight attendants and bag handlers and the guy that works at Hertz and the lady that works at Burger King, all together that form this sort of ecosystem, this family of people that are constantly going out into the adjoining neighborhoods and communities where bags need to be reunited with passengers. And so
Right.
we're like, what if we could put those together? And it took a lot of work and convincing, but Delta came along and eventually let us start delivering bags in Daytona Beach, Florida, a place where they knew that we probably couldn't hurt anything. Or we're delivering maybe 2 bags a week to dudes at Bike Week at first, and doing everything we could to make sure that that worked.
Right.
And but I love Delta because they, like, some employee put Roadie on somebody's credit card there to get it started, because like we
Wow.
had no way of billing them at that point in time,
Right.
and it really got us started.
Are you overwhelmed by permits and expiring documents? Digital Permit Book can streamline your compliance process and save you tons of time. Organize all of your documents, drivers, and vehicles in one central location. Automatic expiry notifications ensure you never miss a deadline, and effortless collaboration tools keep your entire team on the same page. Stop wasting time on paperwork and focus on getting the job done. Visit digitalpermitbook.com today and say goodbye to compliance chaos. The Texas Trucking Show is roaring back into Houston, Texas at the NRG Center on June 29th and 30th. That's right. Mark your calendars for 2 jam-packed days of everything trucking. We're talking over 300 companies, from industry giants to the latest tech startups. Need a new trailer? Check. Looking for innovative solutions? Check. There's even a job fair and media partners just like us. Plus, admission is completely free. Just head over to texastruckingshow.com and snag yours before they're gone. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to connect, learn, and grow your business. And while you're there, be sure to stop by ThinkFreight at booth 1119. We'd love to connect. That's really awesome. When do you remember when that kind of happened, when you kind of got that break with Delta starting to deliver bags?
Yeah, I mean, we I had the idea in, like, as I said, February of 14. We built the product throughout 2014, and then really kind of launched the product in February of 15. And we were delivering bags by the fourth quarter of 2015. So from the time we
Wow.
first met them, it was very quick. In when you think about dealing with larger companies,
Yeah.
it only took 5 or 6 months to get in there, and some tense conversations with some folks at Delta that weren't as into trying something new. I mean,
For
there's
sure.
one funny conversation I'll tell you. We were in we're in a meeting, and you've got like 45 people in there to talk to this startup that, like, doesn't
Right.
garner what all these people are making per hour to be in the room. And we have these very nice books that make us look bigger than we are, and have the meeting, talk about Roadie and what we can do. And then, you always have the designated smart person on the other side of the room, cross the fingers, clears the throat, and asks a question. And this guy was like, and when they clear the throat, everybody looks over and they're waiting for it. He's
Yep.
like, Delta is a huge, great brand, and we have that brand to protect. And how do we know that with all these drivers, are going to represent Delta in the way it needs to be represented?
Mm.
And then the room falls silent, and everybody looks at me, take a breath, and look at him. I'm like, look, I've over many millions of miles on Delta. Y'all have lost my bag, a number of times. And the last time you did, 2 dudes in a red Honda hatchback smelling like weed showed up to deliver it to the door. I assure you we can do better. And everybody kind of laughed, but they knew it was right, and just sort of diffused the situation, and we moved on from there.
Wow. That's that's a fun that's a fun convo that you guys had, and definitely, like, what a great response that you had to it, because you've had that experience with Delta. You've had that lived experience with them losing your bag and getting it back. So you knew right away you could very easily perform a lot better than what they were already doing, and just kind of showing that right into like the room of executives that were or whoever they were, this team, just kind of having that pushback and saying, hey, listen, we can do much better than what you guys are already doing. I think that's a really great way to go about it. Mark, so let me ask you, so you guys,
no harm. I mean,
right.
at the point in time, and they were using other vendors, but I mean, it could have been 8 hours, 10 hours, or days later when you're getting your bags back, and now it's
Yeah.
around 2, if not less, at most airports around the country. And we work with Delta and American and Southwest and Alaska and a bunch of others.
Now, I want to ask you. So, what is the normal time if a bag is goes up on the Roadie platform for someone to deliver? How long does it generally take? I mean, obviously depending on the mileage and how far away they are, but how long does it generally take for someone to accept grabbing that bag or accept that load? And how long is it generally like? What does that service generally look like?
It's usually delivered within a couple hours, give
Mm,
or take. Like you said, the mileage matters. The difficulty of the airport sometimes matters. It's
yeah.
easier to get to smaller airports than to, Los Angeles but it's pretty consistent across the board.
No, that's awesome. And how does the communication go with I guess with the consumer on the other side? Is that taken care of with through like Delta, or how is that handled? Do you guys handle any of that?
It's sort of a combination. I mean,
Mm,
Delta lets the passenger know that Roadie will be delivering it, and when it's out for delivery, they'll get if they want a text or an email that they can click on, and they can track their bag coming to their house, just like they ordered a pizza and they're watching it coming down the street.
okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I had I'll tell you a personal experience I had recently with. Fortunately, wasn't a roadie vendor, but I had a battery delivered to my house. I had a dead battery when I was home alone. My fiance was out of town, and I had one delivered, and I was like, wow, this is like the most simple process. I ordered it on I think like AutoZone or AutoZone's website, and it came within I think like well over an hour before my delivery time was scheduled. And like you said, it gave me exactly kind of, I opted into the delivery, like text and things like that. So I got a map exactly where the driver was, how close he was getting. It said, hey, driver's approaching. And I was absolutely, like, that was the first time I'd ever like had done something like that. It was probably a month or so ago. And it was such an interesting process and such a, like, I was so amazed. Like, things have come so far in this space with in terms of being able to just order that and have it delivered within about 2 hours. I think that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, which is why I think it starts becoming table stakes for anybody in retail or otherwise. If I mean Amazon sort of finished it. What I mean, COVID's kind
Yeah.
of finished what Amazon started, where everybody not only had to get it delivered, but they expected it pretty fast.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. And let me ask you this. So you had mentioned you had thought at the kind of the beginning there was going to be a lot more maybe consumer demand, consumer to consumer, or consumer to business demand. Are you guys still operating in those two spaces, or is it mainly business to consumer and business to business?
It's mainly a business to consumer, but there still is consumer to consumer demand in there. I mean, some of the
Mm,
better stories that came out of those early days were consumers not having a good way to send something because
yeah.
it's either too big or it's too awkward or it's long a distance, and
Yep.
so a lot of folks that just saw us early on still think it's just folks taking things long distances on road trips or vacations to someone that needs it somewhere else. And I mean, those things still do happen from
Yeah.
time to time, but because we focus so much on enterprise customers like a Home Depot or a Walmart or a Tractor Supply or the airlines or CVS, Best Buy, we
Mm.
they tend to just have a lot more volume of deliveries, which makes the other percentage of consumer to consumer just smaller.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And what is kind of that process like if you're maybe a business or even a consumer, or possibly even a driver that wants to get set up with Roadie? What is kind of that process like, and how simple is it to either drive with Roadie or sign up with Roadie to send things?
Super easy on both sides. You just
Mm,
if you're a driver, just download the Roadie Driver app that you can find on Google Play Store, or the App Store for Apple, and it's pretty simple. You sign up, you put in the same sort of stuff you might put in if you were using some other crowdsourced platform. There's a background
yeah,
check piece that goes into place to make sure that we've got the right people on the platform. And you probably you do a number of gigs before you get in there and get the hang of it, and then you're probably going to get the opportunity to offer on a lot more gigs.
yeah. And how do you ensure that some of these drivers, like you said, you had that experience, with Delta. How do you kind of make sure you don't have that similar process or similar driver experiences where the driver kind of hops out smelling like weed, and you just kind of have an overall bad experience with kind of your driver? I know I've kind of had some of those experiences with like Uber Eats and things like that, where you get your stuff, your food or whatever, and it smells like cigarettes or whatever, and you're like, wow, this is a bad experience. How do you ensure that those kind of experiences are limited to far and few between?
Yeah, it's also one of the reasons we don't do food with stuff, because you don't want your sweater smelling like a cheeseburger.
Right.
But beyond that, I mean, first of all, everybody's going to have a problem some of the time if you touch enough consumers and enough deliveries. It's a huge volume of things, so it's hard for anybody to be perfect with it. But we have a driver scorecard, and a lot of it is not just on us, but also on our partners that send things and letting us know how it went. And it's you want to know that one thing is on time delivery, and that's good, but you don't want somebody to be rude or something else that's off-putting to their end customers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you go to a restaurant and it's the food was great, but the hostess was rude. There's not a star rating for that, so you sort of got to break it down to its piece parts to understand where you're like excelling, and if there's places where you're falling short and need to do better. So we've created scorecards, and we've got a new enhancement coming out to really try to understand, what drivers are great at what things, what aren't good, and we coach drivers up if it's something that they're missing, and then if they're not doing what they should, then we like to joke that we promote them to Uber driver.
That's funny. Let me ask you, so can anyone in terms of like a vehicle type deliver for Roadie? Like if I have a smart car, can I deliver for Roadie? Or if I have as big as, a Sprinter van or box truck, can I also deliver for Roadie?
All of the above, and we welcome them all. There's sizing of understanding what type of vehicle you have within the app. So when we understand what the retailer is and how big the item is that they need to send, then we're able to match that up with the appropriately sized car for any of those deliveries. And if it's a consolidated gig where you have many items that you're delivering, making sure all of them will fit in your car. It might be different from a smart car than a big car.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have been doing tests around Roadie Green in different areas where, retailers that prefer for their deliveries to be made from green vehicles, we do that. And the early signs of that test is pretty interesting, because with just, putting that selector in place, probably 30%, maybe a little more, went to green vehicles. And then you find other things like, wow, people that have green vehicles, like, sometimes do a better job on the deliveries, or like there's different data points that you notice, but we're still studying to figure out what it is. But we definitely, there's a few partners we've turned it on for to see how it works for them and us and otherwise. But big box trucks and panel vans, we do plenty of deliveries of windows and doors and a lot barbecue grills and a lot larger items, and have since the beginning. So we can handle all those too. So we need those vehicles.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you said, people, you kind of can match some of the freight. So are you sending offers to some of your drivers, or is it like a bid system, or do you kind of like log into the app when you want to go out and start working? How does that work?
Yeah, it's to these drivers are totally independent contractors. They decide what they want to do. We're okay with episodic use. So the Roadie app puts gigs up of where the gigs are in the system, and drivers raise their hand and say, I would like to do that. And the system tries to figure out like which driver makes the most sense, best rating, who's closest to the gig, who can make sure that it gets delivered by the time that Thomas ordered it and actually get to you on time, and takes all that into account and then awards it to somebody who offers. But very different than in a lot of apps, you're just pushed by a DoorDash to go get a cheeseburger and take it to Thomas. In this case, you see it's a drill coming from Home Depot to Mark. Well, Thomas, you're, you get paid $10 and it needs to be there by 4 p.m. It's going to Mark's house at 123 Main Street. Would you like to do it? And you have that choice to say, yes, I'd be interested, or I don't. It's not pushed on you. I think one thing the Roadie the platform has that others don't is just sort of a trust and transparency, because you get to make your own calls.
That's awesome. And so let me ask you, so how tough is it maybe finding balance with your contractors and some of those shippers that are looking to move goods at an effective price? I had mentioned I moderate a pretty big group of expediters, and some of their questions are why are rates so cheap? And obviously, you and I know it's a lot of supply and demand, but how do you kind of balance keeping both those shipper customers happy as well as kind of your contractors?
I mean, that's the magic trick of the whole thing, and it's not just like you solve that equation in one place. You solve it in every city, every time of day, every weather condition.
Yeah.
It keeps expanding out like the Russian dolls. It never ends. I think what you do is you try to let people understand that there's certain conditions where gigs will pay more or not pay more. If you're trying to deliver a bag from Philadelphia Airport at 2 p.m., maybe you get paid a little less than you do at 2 a.m. Some gigs are just functionally harder than others. If it's a 60-inch TV, it's probably getting paid a little bit more than an iPhone cable. So trying to have some semblance of fairness, both in terms of the size of the item, the distance it's going, and whatever the world conditions are around it, time of day, weather.
Now, can drivers, if they're at a Best Buy picking up something, coming to Mark, say you've got a new TV coming, can they also deliver multiple other Best Buy deliveries that are heading in a similar direction?
Absolutely, we can do routed and batch deliveries from most everybody we work with, and it's better for the retailer and better for the driver. So we definitely try to do that as much as we can.
No, that's definitely a smart way for drivers to be able to take multiple trips and make it a little bit more worth their time. If it's a little bit less paying on one that they saw originally, they may be able to grab two or three that are headed in the same direction and make it a little bit more profitable for themselves.
I mean, beyond even that, Thomas, we've got blocks where you can say I've got 4 hours free. And things you can do during that time. And one step even further is, yes, I've picked up those things at Best Buy and I'm heading to your house, but on the way is a Home Depot, and I could go pick something else up there and deliver that and still hit the time required for your delivery and the person that needed something from Home Depot. So the system can do that as well. Sort of these ad hoc or add-on deliveries in the midst of when you're
That's cool. No, that's really cool that you have that option. I'm going to pivot a little bit, Mark. I want to talk a little bit about kind of freight technology and final mile technology. Kind of what do you see and what do you think is kind of most needed in the space right now? I hear a lot of drivers, looking for additional like options in terms of like load boards and things like that. But in terms of actual real freight technology that can help both drivers and shippers, what do you think is most needed in the industry right now?
I think transparency, honestly, is a pretty good thing that I think we do pretty well with, because all the noise tends to come when everybody doesn't understand each other.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that any of the platform. I mean, we don't really make up some of these prices. We know where the world is and where loads and demands are, and the things that were going on in 2020 have somewhat flipped right now, and they'll flip back to more even keel. But as you do it and everybody's sort of being like, jostled around on that boat of, what things supposed to cost and what it is, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. I think there's advantages in, things like adding on a gig like we just talked about, and routes, and figuring out how people can make the choices to use their time better, and helping drivers, whether they're driving, your EV or, box truck or a 53-foot trailer. Just there's trying to make that more efficient for everybody, I think is where it's going.
Yeah, you had mentioned the word transparency. So when you say that, what do you mean in terms of like, I guess what do you mean in terms of that? So there's a lot of push, I'm sure you're aware, in the FMCSA world of broker transparency. So having to show your rates that your customers are paying to the drivers when asked. What do you think about some of those regulations that are kind of creeping up on us?
I mean, I can't comment on any one regulation alone. I think it's sort of it is a two-sided, double-edged sword, because in some cases if you're dealing with big corporations or enterprises, it's not like one price that you're sharing. It's going to be dependent on volume. It's going to be
Yeah.
dependent on how far things go. It's going to be dependent on time of day. It's going to be dependent on whether it's a rush. So that's what I mean by it really dumbs down the conversation if you try to say, well, what do they pay you for this particular gig? Because they don't. And it depends whether they do a lot more gigs and if there could be a discount involved. So I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, is it's
Yeah.
not that simple as just a price.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that because even in in the full truckload space, it's not always about that. There's a lot of other factors that go into it. And like you said, like there's times when in my world, the full truckload world, there's times where we completely eat it and we completely take big losses on certain aspects because we have we've quoted out this stuff and we say, hey, listen, we have to do this. Like this is one of our biggest customers, one of our massive customers, and we may lose a lot on one particular lane, but we can make it up on these 3 or 4 other lanes, and it doesn't come out to a wash, but we may still make money, but we do still have those. So it's not always as simple as we're making money here, but like you said, there's a lot of volume and a lot of other things that play into it.
And it's not a zero-sum game on that too. I mean, there's plenty that you lose money on, and that you have to do to try to be available all the time. We're always on. We're 24/7, 365. I mean, we're delivering back on Christmas Day. And then there's these other costs that make the experience great, like killer technology that is not necessarily always in the freight world right now like it has been in some of the rest of the world, but like in customer support. How do you make sure you keep the bad drivers out? All of these are costs into making that high percentage of deliveries that go awesome. And you're constantly going to try to weed out a bad apple every now and then. You're constantly going to be dealing with a claim and figuring out what's real and what's not. So those are all costs that are associated with these gigs that are not just a price with paying it. And you're getting it super fast, and the reliability rate we have is super high. So there's a lot to be said for that.
There's a lot of talk of fraud and cargo theft and double brokers across the space right now. Are you guys dealing or seeing with any of that in your space? I know kind of the setup process is a little bit different with you guys. So have you guys seen any of kind of those elements of the supply chain hitting you guys as well?
I don't think anybody who is involved in the supply chain and deals with big retailers is not seeing it. And I think, putting technology in our case in place to, try to make sure that the pipe isn't leaky at any point in time, where you have a very clear chain of custody, both digitally and occasionally via photo at someone's house, does a lot to mitigate that. Also, communication, as you said earlier in the show, is let somebody know that thing is coming to them. It's not going to spend any time on their porch if they know it's coming there. And you take out a link in that chain that could go badly. You make sure it's the right driver showing up. You take out a link in the chain that goes badly. Make sure that if you're getting 3 items sent to Thomas, that Thomas gets 3 items. You take out a link in the chain. Make sure that the actual 3 items that Thomas ordered, you take a link out. So there's room in all those like spaces for things to go astray. And you just gradually make sure each one, is as solid as it can be.
There's a lot of talk around AI right now, Mark. It's really become a pretty big buzzword. I know we're coming up on time, so I want to be respectful here. So we got just a couple more quick questions. But where do you think that AI fits both into kind of the final mile and space that you guys are in, as well as kind of where does it maybe fit into Roadie as a whole?
Sure. I mean, AI is a great tool for analytics. There's value in using it for better informed decision making. We use it in ways to optimize routes, ensure timely deliveries. I mean, there's also value in customer support, where you have a lot of sameness in questions that come in that you can respond more quickly without having to have humans in place to do it. I mean, I think the data analytics and the predicting demand and optimizing delivery routes in space. But I would say you also have to be careful of the shiny ball going across the field with it. It's not
for sure.
the all be all of things out there. And I think folks have trouble sometimes separating the signal from the noise. Everybody thinks the next new thing is going to be an issue that they've got to talk about. When we first got started, I mean, it was all, what are you going to do with autonomous vehicles and robots and drones? And honestly, I'm sitting here in the South. We shoot those out of the sky for sport.
Yeah.
And it's and then some of those trends just sort of pass by. Or what you realize later is, yes, they're there, but they're no less expensive to keep up and maintain than the incumbent ways of doing things. So we try not to get lose our breath too much on new things that come down the pike until the actual value of it is really shown, versus doing the things we know we need to do to make the customer experience better.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. And there's a lot of companies that are like, we see it every day, trying to cut jobs with AI, and it's just, it's a tough balancing act, especially when you have a lot of the human element involved. But also you have to know, and like you said, you have to kind of know when and where to place AI and where it can really be most effective for kind of each individual company. It's not going to be a kind of one size fits all. Kind of depends on where you are in the supply chain or where you are in business. So yeah, I completely agree with it, Mark. I have one more quick question.
A lot of companies are doing AI washing too, where they're trying to wrap themselves in the blanket of it, even though they're doing nothing with it. So
yeah, and that's a huge thing. I was actually reading. I've read a lot of things about it recently, where a lot of companies are just completely saying, hey, we're doing a lot of this AI. Well, I'll just give, for example, route optimization and tracking, and it's like you come to find out that they're doing absolutely none of it. And it's just, they're kind of doing the same old things that they were doing before. We're seeing a lot of companies get fined and take serious penalties for this washing. So, Mark, we'll ask, kind of quick question.
Sure.
I think it's a kind of fun one instead of, so as business like, but what are you most bullish on for the rest of 2024? Whether that's in freight or something else, what are you the most bullish on in terms of everything in the economy and what's happening in the world right now?
I mean, I'm going to answer it a little more self-focused, because I am most focused on big and bulky.
Interesting.
Particularly within Roadie, because I think everything that's been set up over the past 4 years of getting everything from your lemons and your laundry detergent, your dog food, delivered quickly, is about to affect big and bulky things. And that's some things you'll see from Roadie coming up, where there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get your futon and your big screen TV and your barbecue grill and your ping pong table and all that stuff that typically, when you're checking out, takes a week or more to get it out there.
Yep.
I think retailers are definitely the ones that we're talking to are leaning in on figuring out how do we, change the supply chain with these items and make sure that people can get larger stuff the same way they get smaller stuff. So I think you're gonna see a lot of things coming out of Roadie and us in that area, and that's one of the things I'm most excited about.
Are you seeing companies switch right now, Mark, to kind of a more I guess a closer warehouse system or final mile to their customers? So instead of having one distribution center just outside of say Houston, they've got maybe one a couple right in Houston to be able to do same day and get into some of those more densely populated areas, as well as getting into some of these smaller markets to be able to really make those really quick turnarounds. Are you guys seeing a lot more in terms of kind of the warehousing of some of these bigger goods, kind of like an Amazon DC, to be able to move some of these things a little bit quicker? Are you kind of seeing that with kind of change in terms of some of how some of these other retailers are operating as well?
I mean, I think you've seen it somewhat in the largest retailers that can afford to have these fulfillment centers like in town and not further out where warehouse space is cheaper. The way we're changing the game is we're going to have Roadie cross docks in close enough to the major cities and actually bring it from DCs of others.
Wow.
So, and these are these larger items, so it allows like clearing it out of there, and then we can reroute ourselves and combine different customers. So I think separating those out is going to give a lot more room to the carriers, including our big brother of parcel items, which they like doing, and
Yeah.
stuff just doesn't fit, and they don't do same day. So I think a combination of allowing, the bigger folks will have places in town, but I think everybody else that's not going to be able to afford that, we can provide another place to go.
That's awesome. We're definitely looking forward to kind of seeing how you guys progress in the big and bulky space, and kind of seeing what you guys do next. When can we kind of hear more about that? When you guys have a little bit more info coming out about that, Mark?
You'll probably hear more about it in the next couple months, and happy to come back on and talk more about it then. Just got a little piece of it now.
Yeah, please. No, we'll definitely have to set that up and do that. Mark, again, I really appreciate your time and coming on the show, talking about Roadie, kind of what you guys are doing, and looking forward to having you back. If people want to check you out, kind of the content you're posting as well as what Roadie's doing, how can they find what you guys are doing?
Well, Roadie.com for everything with the company, and Roadie is on all of the major channels that you might expect. We also post, a lot of how-tos and things if you want to do it for your own company on LinkedIn and other places. And I'm just Marc with a C, Gorlin on LinkedIn as well. So I occasionally put some stuff out as well.
Sounds good. Mark, we'll have all the comments or all the links in the comments. So if anyone wants to check out what you're doing or what Roadie's doing or needs any help, they can check you guys out there. If you guys like today's podcast, make sure you guys give it a like and review. And don't forget to check out our 3-time weekly newsletters at Monday, Wednesday, Friday, thinkfreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode.